Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We have a stack of research on the desk today that is, quite frankly, difficult to categorize.
It really is.
We are looking at a man who, he spent his entire life building a fortress around himself.
A fortress made of tweed, cigar smoke, and some of the most lethal wit in the English language.
We are talking about Evelyn Waugh.
Yeah.
And if you know the name, you probably have a very, very specific image in your head.
Oh, I'm sure.
You're likely picturing the Crusty Colonel, the older Waugh.
Right.
The man who looked like an angry bullfrog in a three-piece suit, who, hated the Beatles, hated plastic, refused to drive a car.
And treated the telephone like it was an instrument of torture devised by the devil.
Exactly.
That is the caricature, absolutely. The grand old man of letters who just seemed to exist solely to grumble about the decline of Western civilization.
But the fascinating thing about this deep dive, and I think the reason you're going to be surprised, is that this persona, it wasn't who he really was.
Or at least it wasn't who he started out as.
That's the hook for me.
Yep.
It really is. Because when you dig into the biography, you don't find a conservative curmudgeon in the beginning. Not at all.
No.
You find a rebel. You find a heavy-drinking, sexually fluid, wild bohemian running around 1920s London with the bright young things.
It's almost like looking at two different people. It really is.
So how does that happen?
Well, it creates this central tension that runs through his entire life. On one hand, you have the prose stylist, widely considered one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. A man capable of writing English sentences that are so elegant, so precise, and so funny that they make other writers want to just snap their pencils in half.
And on the other hand?
On the other hand, you have this reputation as the nastiest-tempered man in England. A bully, a snob.
A monster.
Some people called him that, yes. A monster.
So the mission today is to bridge that gap. We need to figure out how the bullied son of a publisher transformed into this literary icon and then into the monster of his later years. We want to understand the mask. Was the nasty persona real, or was it a performance art piece that just got out of hand?
I think to understand the mask, you have to look at the face underneath it. And that face was formed in Hampstead, London in 1903.
Let's start there, the family dynamic.
Yeah.
Because reading through the early biography, it feels like the script for a psychological drama.
It does.
Evelyn Waugh was born into a very literary household. His father, Arthur Waugh, was a publisher and a well-known critic. On paper, it sounds like the perfect environment for a budding writer.
On paper, yes. In reality, it was a battlefield. There was a very specific and I'd say very painful geometry to the Waugh family.
What do you mean by geometry?
Well, Evelyn was incredibly close to his mother, Catherine. He was a mummy's boy in those early years. She taught him to read, she nurtured him, but he was almost completely excluded by his father.
And this wasn't just a case of a distant Victorian father, was it? This was active favoritism.
Oh, it was flagrant. Arthur Waugh had a profound, almost obsessive bond with his elder son, Alec.
Alec Waugh.
Alec was 5 years older. He was the golden boy. He was the athlete, the cricketer, the one who could do no wrong. Arthur doted on him.
Wow.
And there are these heartbreaking stories of Evelyn sitting in the corner, literally watching his father fawn over Alec, feeling like a ghost in his own house.
The spare to the heir dynamic, but played out in a middle-class drawing room.
Exactly. And psychologists and literary biographers, for that matter, they point to this as the foundational trauma of Waugh's life.
That feeling of exclusion.
That feeling of exclusion, of being the lesser son, the outsider looking in. It didn't make him withdraw, though. That's the key thing. It made him pugnacious.
It lit a fire.
It did. He realized early on that if he couldn't be the favorite, he would be the most noticeable. He had to fight for attention.
So he develops this wit as a weapon.
A sharp attacking wit as a defense mechanism. Even as a child at his prep school, Heath Mount, he described himself as a clever little boy, but he also admitted, quite candidly, that he was a bully.
A self-admitted bully.
Yes. There's a specific anecdote about this that I love, simply for the sheer celebrity irony of it.
What?
He went to school with Cecil Beaton.
No way. The Cecil Beaton.
The future society photographer, the man who would go on to photograph the Queen and define the aesthetic of the mid-20th century.
And Evelyn Waugh, this small, aggressive child,
bullied him mercilessly.
That's incredible. It's a clash of titans before they were titans.
It is. But it shows that Waugh was already asserting dominance, using his wit and his cruelty to establish a pecking order. He was also writing, of course.
Even then.
Oh, yes. He wrote a story called The Curse of the Horse Race as a child. You can already see the dark humor, the cynicism bubbling up.
He wasn't writing sweet stories about bunnies.
No, he was writing about curses and betting. But the real turning point, the moment that really solidified his status as the outsider, involved his brother Alec again. We have to talk about the Alec scandal.
This sounds juicy.
This is a crucial piece of context that often gets overlooked. The plan, the expectation, was that Evelyn would follow the family tradition. His father went to Sherborne School, Alec went to Sherborne School.
So Evelyn was supposed to go to Sherborne School.
It was his birthright.
And Alec blew it up.
Completely. Alec was expelled from Sherborne for a homosexual relationship.
Wow.
Now, in the context of British public schools at the time, this kind of thing happened, but it was usually handled with quiet discretion. You were sent home, and no one spoke of it. Alec Waugh did not do discretion.
He wrote a book about it.
He wrote a book about it, The Loom of Youth. He wrote it while waiting for his military commission, and it was a sensation, a bestseller.
What was in it?
It exposed the reality of public school life, the cruelty, the sports obsession, and yes, the romantic friendships between boys. It was scandalously explicit for the time.
And the fallout for the family was nuclear.
The headmaster of Sherborne was so offended that he basically blacklisted the entire Waugh family. He told Arthur Waugh that no son of his would ever be welcome at Sherborne again.
So Evelyn is punished for his brother's sins.
He was collateral damage. He was forced to go to Lancing College instead.
And Lancing was? What?
Lancing is a perfectly fine school, but in Evelyn's mind, in that class-obsessed, hierarchy-obsessed mind, it was inferior. It was second-rate. He felt he had been downgraded. It was a humiliation that he blamed on his father and his brother for the rest of his life.
But this is where we see the pattern that defines his life. When he's put in a situation he hates, he doesn't just endure it, he subverts it.
He absolutely does. He arrives at Lancing, and instead of trying to fit in with the sporty types, he goes the complete opposite direction. He creates a counterculture.
He becomes an aesthete?
He becomes an aesthete. He mocks the school's cadet corps, which was taken very seriously during the war years. And he founds a club. And the name of this club is just... It's pure Evelyn Waugh.
The Corpse Club.
The Corpse Club.
I love that.
And the membership requirement was that you had to be board stiff.
That is fantastic. It's so teenage, so angsty,
Yeah.
but also genuinely funny.
It is. It's performance art. He's taking his boredom and his disdain and turning it into a badge of honor.
And he also loses his faith around this time.
He sheds his religious beliefs completely. He went into Lancing as a boy with a vague faith and came out a devout atheist. He wanted to shock. He wanted to be the smartest, most cynical person in the room.
But he survives Lancing, he gets the grades, and he heads to Oxford, Hertford College, 1922.
Right.
And this is the era we associate with Brideshead Revisited. But the reality of Waugh's Oxford wasn't initially the champagne-soaked nostalgia trip we might expect.
No, not at all. He started off trying to be a serious student. He smoked a pipe, he rode a bicycle, he spoke at the Oxford Union debates on political history.
He's trying to be the good student.
The good student his father wanted. But then, the bright young people arrived.
The influencers of the 1920s.
Exactly. Figures like Harold Acton and Brian Howard. These were Etonians. They were wealthy, they were sophisticated, they wore makeup, they recited poetry through megaphones, they were avant-garde and aggressively modern.
And Waugh was drawn to that.
He was mesmerized by them.
And he didn't just watch them, he joined them.
He dove in head first. He became the secretary of the Hypocrites Club.
The Hypocrites Club. The names are just perfect.
Again, the name tells you everything. The Hypocrites Club was the epicenter of the bad crowd. It was artistic, socially fluid, and sexually fluid. Waugh later wrote that this club was the stamping ground of half my Oxford life.
When we say sexually fluid, we should be specific. This was a period of intense experimentation for him.
It was. He embarked on several homosexual relationships. The sources highlight Richard Pears and, most significantly, a man named Alistair Graham.
Alistair Graham. That name is important, isn't it?
It's a name that literary detectives always circle because he's a prototype. He is widely considered the primary inspiration for Sebastian Flyte in Brideshead Revisited.
So beautiful, aristocratic.
Charming and doomed. Waugh was infatuated with him. This wasn't just experimentation for him. It was deep emotional attachment.
But while he's having this intense social and romantic life, his academic life is just imploding.
He completely stopped working. He spent all his money on clothes and alcohol, and this led to a feud that is, honestly, one of the funniest and most petty chapters in literary history.
Oh, is this a tutor?
The feud with his history tutor, CRMF Crutwell.
We have to unpack the Crutwell feud. Because most people, if they don't like a teacher, they complain to their friends and then move on. Waugh did not move on.
No. Crutwell was a serious academic. He saw Waugh as a wasted talent, a drunk, and a nuisance. He tried to advise Waugh to pull himself together, and Waugh responded with what he later called fatuous haughtiness.
So they despised each other.
They did, but Waugh played the long game.
The very long game.
For the rest of his writing career, decades later, whenever Waugh needed a name for a truly detestable, odious character, he named them Crutwell.
Give us some examples. I need to hear this.
Okay. In his novels, the name Crutwell appears as a burglar, a fake tan salesman,
A fake can salesman.
a homicidal maniac, even a minor character who exists solely to be humiliated in some way. It was this running joke that only Waugh and his friends really got, but it was his way of getting the last laugh over and over again.
The level of grudge holding is almost admirable.
It's a commitment, it really is.
But the grudge didn't save his degree.
No. The partying caught up with him. He received a third-class degree, which was a disaster for a scholarship boy. He lost his funding. He couldn't return for his final term. He left Oxford in disgrace.
No degrees.
No degree, mountains of debt, and absolutely no prospects.
In his mental state at this point, what was that like?
Fragile. Extremely fragile. His letters from this time talk about severe emotional pressures and feeling nearly insane. He felt he had completely blown his chance at life.
This ushers in what you'd call the lost years, right? The mid-1920s.
Exactly. He's bouncing around trying to find a footing. He tries art school, fails. He takes a series of teaching jobs in terrible schools, hates them.
And gets fired from one in spectacular fashion, I read.
Oh, yes. He was dismissed from a teaching post at a place called Aston Clinton for the attempted drunken seduction of a school matron.
You can't make this stuff up. It sounds like a scene from one of his later novels.
It's pure slapstick, but with a really dark undercurrent. And that darkness bottoms out in 1925. This is the jellyfish incident.
Okay, this is the story I was waiting for.
This is the moment where tragedy and comedy collide perfectly. Waugh is depressed. He feels like a complete failure. He decides to commit suicide.
So walk us through the scene. Where is he?
He goes down to the beach near his school. He leaves a suicide note with his clothes on the sand, like something out of a Victorian melodrama.
Very dramatic.
Very. And he walks into the water and begins to swim out to sea, fully intending to drown himself. He's ready to die, and then he gets stung by a jellyfish.
A jellyfish.
A jellyfish. The pain was sharp and immediate. And being Evelyn Waugh, a man who hated discomfort even more than he hated life at that moment, he decided that being stung was simply too unpleasant.
So the sting snapped him out of it.
Completely. It broke the trance. He turned around, swam back to shore, put his clothes on, and tore up the note.
It's incredible. The sheer absurdity of it saved him. If it had been a shark, he might be a tragic figure. But a jellyfish makes it a funny story.
It's the perfect Waugh anecdote. It undercuts the romance of suicide with the stinging reality of nature. He couldn't even kill himself without it turning into a farce.
So he survives. And shortly after this, things seem to stabilize a bit. He meets a woman, Evelyn Gardner.
Yes. And because her name was Evelyn and his name was Evelyn, their circle, which, loved a good joke, called them He-Evelyn and She-Evelyn.
That's cute. But the foundations were rotten from the start, weren't they?
They were. They married in 1928, but it was against her family's wishes. Her mother, Lady Berkeley, thought Waugh was bad news.
And looking at his resume at the time.
She wasn't wrong. Failed degree, debts, the drinking. She said he lacked moral fiber.
But professionally, this is the moment he breaks through, isn't it?
Yeah.
He publishes Decline and Fall.
Yes, 1928. It's an instant classic. It's hilarious. It's biting. It captures the madness of the era. Suddenly, Waugh isn't the failed teacher anymore. He's the hottest young writer in London.
He has money. He has fame.
He has a wife. Things are looking up.
And then the rug gets pulled out.
The betrayal. This is the event that I think really hardens him. While Waugh was away in the country writing travel articles, working to support them, She-Evelyn confessed that she was having an affair.
And not just with anyone.
No. With their mutual friend, John Haygate. A man they socialized with. A man Waugh trusted.
That double betrayal must have been devastating.
It broke him. He filed for divorce in 1929, but the psychological wound went deep. Biographers argue that this betrayal is the root of the misogyny and the deep cynicism about human relationships that pervades his later work.
He decided people couldn't be trusted.
And specifically women, in his mind, he just shut down that part of himself.
So he's alone again. He's heartbroken. The bright young thing party is over. And in 1930, he makes a move that completely baffles his bohemian friends. He converts to Roman Catholicism.
This was headline news in his circle. Why would the cynical, modern, debauched Evelyn Waugh join the most traditional, rigid institution on earth? It made no sense to them.
It wasn't an emotional born-again experience, was it? It was something else.
No, not at all. It was intellectual. He took instruction from Father Martin Darcy, a brilliant Jesuit. Waugh approached it like a logic problem.
A logic problem.
He looked at the world, the chaos, the betrayal, the lack of moral fiber, and he decided that without a structure, without God, life was meaningless. He wrote that life is unintelligible and unendurable without God.
Unintelligible and unendurable. That is a terrifying phrase. It implies that without the church, he felt like he was staring into an abyss.
Exactly. He needed the rules. He needed the order. There's a famous story, it's maybe apocryphal, but it rings so true, where a friend asked him years later, "Evelyn, you're so mean, you're so nasty. How can you call yourself a Christian?"
And the response?
Waugh said, "You have no idea how much nastier I would be if I was not a Catholic. Without supernatural aid, I would hardly be a human being."
Wow. That is profound self-awareness.
Yeah.
He's admitting that the religion isn't a cure, it's a leash.
It was the cage for the monster. He believed that without the sacraments, without confession, he would be a moral vacuum.
So we enter the 1930s. He's now Catholic, divorced, and famous. And he decides to see the world. But he doesn't go on luxury cruises. He goes to the rough spots.
He does. The 1930s were his era of the traveler. He became a special correspondent for newspapers. He wanted to go where the trouble was. In 1930, he went to Abyssinia, modern-day Ethiopia, to cover the coronation of Emperor Haile Selassie.
Now, most of the world press treated this as this majestic, exotic event, the Lion of Judah, the pageantry.
Waugh hated it.
He hated it.
He saw it as a sham. He saw a brutal, disorganized regime trying to put on a costume show for the West. He viewed it with utter cynicism. He called it a propaganda effort.
And this trip gave us the novel Black Mischief. But he went back a few years later in 1935 when Mussolini invaded. And this is where we have to talk about his politics, which were complicated.
Complicated is a very generous word. They were controversial then, and they are definitely controversial now. Waugh supported the Italian invasion.
He supported the fascists.
He did. Now, it wasn't because he was a card-carrying fascist, but because he was obsessed with the idea of civilization with a capital C.
So how did he rationalize that?
He viewed Abyssinia as savage and chaotic. He viewed the Italians, who were fellow Catholics, heirs to the Roman Empire, as the bringers of order and roads and structure. He wrote a book, Waugh in Abyssinia, that was so pro-Italian that critics at the time called it a fascist tract.
It's important to understand this, not to judge him, but to see how his obsession with order could blind him to the brutality of the invasion.
Precisely. His fear of chaos was so strong that he would side with the dictator if he believed it meant maintaining structure.
But looking at the silver lining of his journalism career, his frustration with the press pack gave us one of the greatest comic novels ever written.
Cool.
If you haven't read Scoop, you are missing out on something wonderful.
It is the ultimate satire of journalism. It came directly from his experience in Abyssinia, watching reporters lie, cheat, and just invent stories because they were too lazy to find the truth. He skewered the fake news of his day before the term even existed.
He then went to South America, right? British Guiana and Brazil.
Yes, and it was a miserable trip. He was bored, hot, and lonely. But his misery is our gain, because it inspired his novel, A Handful of Dust.
We have to talk about the ending of that book. We won't spoil the whole plot, but the ending is iconic. It's legendary.
It is a pure nightmare scenario. The protagonist, Tony Last, is this civilized English gentleman who ends up trapped in the Amazon jungle, held captive by an illiterate settler who forces him to read the complete works of Charles Dickens aloud, over and over again, forever.
That's chilling. It's the ultimate hell for a man like Waugh, trapped in squalor, forced to consume sentimentality.
And the crazy thing is, Waugh wrote that ending as a short story first. He liked it so much, he basically said, I have to write a novel just to get to this ending. He built the whole book around that one nightmarish image.
During all this wandering, all this travel, He was effectively homeless, wasn't he?
He was. He was sleeping on sofas, staying at clubs. He was a nomad, but he eventually found a new anchor.
Laura Herbert.
Laura Herbert.
And in true Waugh fashion, it wasn't simple.
No. Laura was young. She was from an aristocratic Catholic family, which was perfect on paper for him. But she was the first cousin of his first wife, She-Evelyn.
The family tree is a wreath. That is so awkward.
It made things very awkward. But Waugh was determined. He spent years petitioning the Catholic Church to annul his first marriage so he could marry Laura in the church.
And he got it.
He finally succeeded. They married in 1937. Her grandmother bought them a manor house, Peers Court.
So he finally has the country estate. He has the Catholic wife. He has the religion. He's playing the part of the English gentleman. And then, 1939, Hitler invades Poland.
And Waugh, at age 36, decides he must fight.
This is one of the most baffling parts of his life to me. Here is a man who is physically unfit, hates authority, is rude to subordinates, and is generally impossible to work with.
And he joins the Royal Marines.
Why?
He was a terrible soldier, let's be absolutely clear. He was brave, he had no fear of death, but he was a management nightmare. The training almost broke him physically. He said his spine was so stiff he couldn't even hold a pen. But the real problem was his personality.
He treated his platoon like they were servants.
Worse, he was haughty, sarcastic, and cold. He refused to bond with the men. It got so bad that when he was stationed in Scotland, his commanding officer had to transfer him to an intelligence role.
Why?
Because the officer was genuinely terrified that if they went into combat, Waugh's own men would shoot him in the back.
That is a staggering level of unpopularity.
Right.
They have to move you so you don't get fragged by your own troops.
That's how bad it was. But he did see action. He was at the Battle of Dakar, a failed operation, and he was in Crete during the evacuation.
The retreat from Crete was a disaster.
It was chaos. Officers fleeing, soldiers surrendering. Waugh maintained his composure, but he was disgusted. He saw cowardice and disorder. It shattered any romantic illusions he had about the glory of war.
So he realized war was just another form of modern chaos.
Exactly. And amidst this disillusionment, after he breaks his leg in a parachuting accident, he takes leave. He goes to a hotel in Devon. And while the world is burning, he writes a book about a teddy bear and a stately home.
Brideshead Revisited.
Brideshead Revisited.
This is the pivot point. This is the big one.
It's the book that changed his life and his legacy. Up until this point, Waugh was known for satire. Decline and Fall, Vile Bodies, they were sharp, jagged, cynical. Brideshead is different.
How so?
It's lush, it's emotional, it's sentimental.
He called it a love letter to a vanished age.
He genuinely believed that the English aristocracy was going to be wiped out by the war and the socialist government that he was sure would follow. He wanted to preserve that world in amber. It's also his first explicitly Catholic novel. It's about the operation of grace on a group of sinners.
The public reaction was massive.
Especially in America. It became a Book of the Month Club selection. It made him genuinely wealthy for the first time. But the critics, they turned on him.
He thought he had gone soft.
They thought he had gone snobbish. Connor Cruise O'Brien famously attacked the book for its mystical veneration of the upper classes. They said he was worshiping the rich.
Did Waugh agree?
Later in life, he kind of did. He admitted he had overdone it. He said he had been on a simplistic food diet during wartime rationing, so when he wrote the book, he gorged himself on rich language. He compared the book to eating too much whipped cream.
But whipped cream or not, it stands as a masterpiece of style.
Absolutely. The sentences are perfect. You can't deny the beauty of the prose.
There is one last chapter to his war, the Yugoslavia mission.
This is a fascinating historical footnote. Waugh was recruited by Randolph Churchill Winston's son to go to Yugoslavia and act as a liaison with Marshal Tito's communist partisans.
A conservative Catholic meeting a communist revolutionary. What could go wrong?
It was a disaster waiting to happen. Waugh hated Tito. He saw the partisans not as liberators, but as the next oppressors. And he became obsessed with the fate of the Catholic Church in Croatia. He saw that the communists were going to persecute the priests.
So he wrote a report about it.
A very detailed report warning the British government that their new ally, Tito, was going to destroy the church.
And the government buried it.
The Foreign Office suppressed it. It was realpolitik. Britain needed Tito to kill Nazis. They didn't care about a few priests in Croatia.
So he felt betrayed.
Totally betrayed. He felt that the war, which was supposed to be a crusade against evil, had just traded one evil, Nazism, for another, communism.
This betrayal sets the stage for the post-war Waugh. The monster emerges fully formed.
He returned to England, a bitter man. The Labour Party won the 1945 election. The welfare state was born, the age of the common man. Waugh hated it. He absolutely loathed it. He felt like a stranger in his own country.
He retreated to his country house and basically put up the drawbridge.
He did. He became an eccentric collector. He started buying Victorian paintings, narrative art, fairy paintings, which in the late 40s were considered absolute junk.
Really?
Oh, yeah. He bought a Rossetti painting for £10.
That's like buying a Van Gogh at a garage sale today.
People laughed at him, but he loved that era. He wanted to live in the 19th century. He surrounded himself with the past to block out the present.
But the walls he built couldn't keep out his own demons, could they? In 1954, the fortress collapsed.
The breakdown. This is the story of the ordeal of Gilbert Pinfold. By the 1950s, Waugh was in bad shape physically, he was drinking heavily, and he was taking a massive amount of chloral and bromide to help him sleep.
A dangerous cocktail.
A very dangerous cocktail. He decided to take a cruise to Ceylon, what's now Sri Lanka, to recover his health. But as soon as he got on the ship, things got weird.
He started hearing voices.
Vivid, distinct voices. He thought the other passengers were whispering about him. He thought there was a mutiny on board. He heard a jazz band playing that didn't exist. He heard the voice of a BBC interviewer mocking him from the ventilation ducts.
So he was having full-blown hallucinations.
Full-blown psychosis. He wrote these letters home to his wife, Laura, detailing these persecutions as if they were fact. The captain is against me, things like that. He eventually got off the ship, flew back to London, and was diagnosed with bromide poisoning.
He was poisoning himself with his sleeping meds.
Yes. Once he stopped the drugs, the voices stopped. But what makes this deep dive worthy is what he did next. Most people would hide this shame. Waugh wrote a novel about it.
The Ordeal of Gilbert Pinfold.
He fictionalized his own madness. He called it his barmy book. He told friends, I went clean off my onion. It was a way of reclaiming control.
Turning his vulnerability into art.
Exactly. And it's arguably his most revealing book because it shows us the paranoia that was always lurking just beneath the surface of that crusty exterior.
We're nearing the end of the timeline. We're in the 1960s. Waugh is now the grand old man. He's interviewed on that famous BBC show, Face to Face.
If you look it up on YouTube, you see the mask in full effect. He sits there looking like a grumpy toad, answering questions with monosyllables, treating the interviewer with utter disdain.
He played the part to perfection.
Oh, completely. He even refused a CBE, a Commander of the British Empire award, because he felt he deserved a knighthood.
I am not a commoner. I deserve a sir.
Pure entitlement, but tragic in a way. He was holding on to a hierarchy that no longer existed.
And then the final blow, the one thing that had sustained him. The church changed.
Vatican II.
Right.
The Catholic Church decided to modernize. They moved from the Latin Mass to the vernacular. Mass in English, handshakes, guitars in church.
For a traditionalist like Waugh, this was heresy.
It broke his heart. It truly did. He wrote, "The buggering up of the church is a deep sorrow to me." He felt that the church had surrendered to the modern world.
The mystery was gone.
The mystery was gone. The Latin, which linked him to history, to the saints, to that sense of order, was gone.
It's almost poetic that he didn't live long in that new world.
No. He died on Easter Sunday, 1966. He had just come home from hearing a Latin Mass, one of the few places that still offered it. He went into his library and passed away. He was buried at his home in Coombe Flory.
So we look back at this whole stack of research. The bullied boy, the Oxford aesthete, the traveler, the soldier, the monster. Who was he?
It's the question that biographers still fight over. Was he a monster? There are so many stories of him being incredibly cruel, telling his own children they were boring, insulting guests at his dinner table.
But then there are also stories of him giving huge amounts of money to poor friends, visiting the sick, anonymously.
I think the key is the mask. Paula Byrne, a wonderful biographer, suggests that the Crusty Colonel was a character he created, a suit of armor.
A defense mechanism.
A very effective one. If he acted like a monster, people would keep their distance, and he couldn't be hurt. He couldn't be betrayed like he was by his first wife or, by his father.
But it came at a cost.
It came at a huge cost. He died a lonely man in many ways.
And yet, the book survives.
The books survive, and that is the ultimate redemption, isn't it? You can hate his politics, you can hate his snobbery, you can hate the way he treated his kids, but you cannot read a paragraph of Scoop or Brideshead or A Handful of Dust and deny the genius.
Clive James said, "Nobody ever wrote a more unaffectedly elegant English."
That's it. In an age where we communicate in emojis and broken sentences, Waugh's obsession with the right word, the perfect cadence, the precise insult, It's a masterclass.
He predicted that literature might die. He thought the modern world would kill the attention span required for art.
And maybe that's our final thought. Maybe that's why we need to read him now more than ever, to prove him wrong, or maybe to realize he was right and appreciate what we've lost.
So if a listener has never read a word of Waugh, where do they start?
I'd say if you want to laugh until your sides hurt, read Scoop. If you want to be swept away by beauty and sadness and nostalgia, read Brideshead Revisited. You can't go wrong with either.
A complex man, a difficult life, but an incredible legacy. Thanks for walking us through the life of Evelyn Waugh.
My pleasure. It was fascinating.
And thank you for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.